beats. And no, not the headphones or the vegetable. So let's start talking about intervals first. So when you play an instrument, you don't just play one note, and that's not very interesting. Usually we listen to a whole bunch of notes together, either in a band or an orchestra. There's always more than one note going on. So an interval is a set of two frequencies that the ratio sounds good. For example, an octave, or two notes with the same name, alright, the frequency ratio is actually 2 to 1. So on my violin, I have the open A string, which is 440 hertz, and the octave above that, the A, is going to be 880 hertz. So when you combine those two wave patterns, alright, you can see that you get this pretty repeating pattern that sounds good to our ears. Another example is a fifth. So on a violin, your strings are tuned a fifth apart, and your frequency ratio for those are 3 to 2. So here it's a little more of a complex pattern, but you can see that the green line there is still periodic and repeating, so it sounds good in our ear. So what about those frequencies that don't sound good together? Well, that's called dissonance. So here, if you pick kind of two random frequencies that don't have any very simple reduced ratio, so here it's 37 to 20, you'll see that this wave pattern doesn't really create anything that's periodic and repeating. Now, eventually it would, but not in the time frame that our ears are going to hear it and have it mean anything to us. So what happens when I have two very similar frequencies? Well, you might think it's going to sound very dissonant, and if you have a good ear, sometimes it does sound pretty awful, but there's another thing that happens with this. So see here I have two waves, wave 1 and wave 2, alright, and they're very close, alright, to being the same frequency, but they're not quite, or they're offset just a little. So here, you can see that when they're superimposed, you get this repeating pattern where you have a large amplitude, and then just about none, and then large again, and then quiet again. So this is what you hear as a beat. So in order to determine the frequency of the beats, you merely take the difference in frequencies between the two original wavelengths. So wave 1 and wave 2, if one was, say, a C at 256 hertz, and the other was 254 hertz, your beat frequency would be the difference, or 2 hertz. And humans can hear up to about a 7 hertz difference before you stop being able to differentiate the beat from just the sound.